I don't even know.
Brent,
How does my mic sound?
oh my God, it sounds incredible.
You sound like a LA Rams announcer.
I was going to say
you.
you have those dulcet and Franchot tones.
I'm trying a new
Is
mic.
that Franchot or
Yes,
Francho?
it's Franchot. Well, I think it's Franchot, but it could be Franchot. But I guess you're the only one. Oh no, Michael, you must have gotten that one.
Of course, I got that. Yes, I did get that.
Yeah, but he was polite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a ranking built into the
We're
reaction.
streaming live, I hope. So, Brent, you'll be checking on that for me on LinkedIn.
Yes, I will.
Else get any sort of notifications? I think I just got my Facebook one.
Right. And
Yeah.
Twitter, of course,
We're about to start the Gillmor gang.
it's like crickets as far as Twitter is concerned. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Ever since Jack Dorsey left, no comment.
It looks like you are live on LinkedIn.
All right.
Yeah, and you're live on Facebook, or as we like to say in Italy, Facebook.
Okay, now that Frank's
Faccia Biblio. Faccia
Okay.
Biblio.
all right.
Exactly.
Do the intro, please.
Sure. All right. Places, everybody. And Steve, why don't you silence your phone?
If I could find it, I would.
If you can find it, please do. Everyone else, silence your phone while we're at it.
So, Tina, what is off?
Is that really a question?
I'm waiting to hear.
What is off?
In South Africa, they say oaf.
No, start again,
Oh.
please.
Okay, here we go. Mute is off. And we're going to go in 3, 2, 1, and.
Hi, mute is off.
Okay.
Keith, is your mute off?
You know, I think the viewers should know that mute off is a throwback to the days of the TriCaster.
That's right.
And even though we no longer need a lumpy piece of $20,000 hardware, we still have to say mute off because otherwise we won't remember our past.
Hey, mute off.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I'm Steve Gillmor, and this is the Gillmor Gang. I'd like to welcome to the show from the state of Atlanta, Georgia. It's Brent Leary.
Yes, it is. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, you got so much bass in that face.
Can we see the hat?
Oh, yeah. This is a tribute to the history. So just like you guys are saying, mute off is a tribute to the TriCaster history. The Cleveland Rams. That's where it all began.
Oh, yeah.
Can't see that. Can you hold that closer to the camera? Oh, that's very nice. Okay, great.
All right.
From the state of the subtext of what is that called? Commonwealth of Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriant.
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Ah. Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Is that
New
enough?
shirt.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Spanky.
That sounds like something you couldn't say in public.
Oh, geez. Now
We're on the air.
We're on the air.
That's not for you. You just go back to sleep.
All right, now we have some howling. Guess what? We're going to do a retake.
Oh, I like it. It's real.
It's all on tape, but
Yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah.
let's do it. Take two.
All those voting against take two, hands up.
Okay.
Just say mute is off, release the hounds.
We're gonna
Let the
let the
dogs
howling subside for a second, and then we're gonna start over.
What was that, Brent? Who let the dogs out?
Who let the dogs
You
out?
did.
Who?
Okay. Would you please do the intro, please?
Yes. Layla Silver.
I don't care.
Okay. All right. Let me just get a. Okay.
That's the dog way of saying "fuck you, Gilmore."
Okay.
No, mute
All right,
off.
hang on a second. I'm going to mute that one right here. Feel free to talk as much as you like, Keith.
Okay. Mute is off, and we're gonna go in 3, 2, 1, and
Hi, Steve Gillmor here. This is the Gillmor Gang. And I'm now going to release Keith Tier from his mute purgatory.
Mute off.
Mutatory.
It's not
Still
working.
on.
Interestingly enough, it gives me the option to refuse to be unmuted.
Oh, good. Excellent. So welcome to from Palo Alto, California, is Keith Tier. Welcome, Keith.
I'm very happy to be here. And for the lower thirds, let me tell you the story of my doctor's visit yesterday, where my PSA was a little bit up. And the doctor sent me an email saying, please try not to vigorously masturbate 3 days before you come to your next appointment, because that's why your PSA is up.
Yeah, and you didn't know that? How could you not know that, Dr. Keith?
aren't you so glad you did a retake?
It's all good. Okay, from the state of Commonwealth of Massachusetts is Dennis Pombriant.
Hi, Steve. Hi, everybody. It's nice to be here.
And that should be enough for the lower third. Thank you. I'm just
No, that doesn't help. It's already on you then. Okay, next one.
Thank you. From Seattle or the environs of is Michael Markman.
How do you do? I'm happy to be here. Anxious, but happy.
Anxious about?
Oh, thermonuclear war, the destruction of Ukraine, the destruction of Russia. It's all a little bit of a shudder.
Little things like that.
And from the Atlanta, Georgia area is Brent Leary.
After that one, I'm starting to get a little fear myself. Thanks, Michael.
I didn't start it.
Almost as bad as the Rams losing a key player to opposition.
Come on, Dr. Keith. Why must we start this right now?
And last but not least is from London, Frank Radis.
Would you like to play a game?
Wow.
I don't understand the reference.
There was
War
a movie
Games.
called War Games. Thank
War
you.
War games.
It was, shall we play a game?
Shall we play a game? Yes. Well, I was trying to get the Brent Leary dulcet tone in there.
It's actually a really good movie in its time now.
It
It was. I did a story on that. Could it ever really happen? I had a chance to actually go into Cheyenne Mountain through that gigantic, ever widening hole as a reference to a
I don't think you want to combine.
to a fire
shall we,
site.
combining
to a fire-
shall we play a game with
to
ever widening
ever-widening.
hole?
That was a Fireside Theater reference. Through the giant hole. Anyway,
Well, you always got to get one of those references in every show.
I try.
Okay.
The best holes are not giant. Just saying.
Ah! Tell that to your doctor. Doctor.
Well, I think I'm going to just put my audio here on mute because I'm blissfully unaware of all this commentary. So, Frank, it's your show. Take it.
Why would you say that? I actually do have something I want to discuss, and it's got to do with the Russian disinformation and the news out on social media. And I'm so confused. It feels like the Ukrainians are being very strong and they're fighting back and they're causing all sorts of damage. And obviously the Russians are saying it's not a war and everything's fine. So where are we? I mean, who do we listen to? What do we think? I'm just, aside from all the really horrible stuff that I keep seeing on TV, I've actually gotten to the point where I stop and I turn it off because I don't want to see it anymore. On the other hand, is it any worse than Syria or Beirut or, you know,
Well, the only difference is it's in Europe, so everyone pays a lot more attention because the what could go wrong narrative surrounding Europe is a lot more scary than the what could go wrong narrative in the Middle East, probably. So I think most people are focused on what could go wrong. If you looked at Ukraine and Syria from the point of view of destruction of cities and people and homes, they're pretty equivalent because it's the Russian playbook on how to conduct this kind of a thing. I've tracked my feelings through listening to Michael McFaul, which I'm sure you've all seen him on TV because he's been everywhere. And I spent half an hour in his company this morning, not personally, but on TV. And I think he is a smart commentator on the whole thing. I think he's very balanced. He's extremely aware that the West cannot directly intervene, even including UN soldiers making safe corridors, even with Russian permission. He's kind of against any actual intervention in Ukraine by Western military. On the other hand, he's entirely in favor of quietly and without announcing it, trying to do anything he can to help the Ukrainians up to and including the supply of armaments, because he wants them to win. And he's fairly prescient on, you know, the Russian part of the story in terms of understanding what's going on here and what an outcome might look like.
But Keith, I think my question more is it really possible that the Russians are making a lot of mistakes, and this is not this fighting force is not the Russian, it's the Russian fighting force fighting an old style war?
No, I disagree with that narrative. I think it's a very calculated military adventure, entirely consistent with the view that they're going in as peacekeepers to stop Russians being attacked by Ukrainians. And so in order to support that narrative, they can't do airstrikes, you know, nuclear or any of the above. They've got to make it look like a land invasion around the periphery of the country. And in their peace, in what they say that they would require for peace, which is a change of government in the Ukraine and a promise not to join NATO, and then thirdly, the recognition of the independent republics in the Donetsk and is it Lubyansk? I'm saying that wrong.
In Donbass.
Region. So basically, the entire Russian narrative is consistent with them being able to be like the UK was in Northern Ireland. This is like the IRA used to say this is a war, and the British government said no, it isn't. It's protecting the Protestants from the Catholics.
Dennis, Dennis, you wrote something about Potemkin Village. Can you add that to this?
Well, sure. I just wrote it this morning. I put it up in the app. You probably haven't seen it. It occurred to me very recently that Russia doesn't have a nuclear threat. I know they've got weapons. I know they've demonstrated them, but that was decades ago. I think the Russian nuclear capability has fallen into disrepair. I think Putin threatened nukes so early that he wanted to freeze everyone from getting into Ukraine so that he could do whatever he was going to do, lay waste to the country before anybody got wise. I think if you look at the numbers tell a very interesting tale. We all talked a couple of weeks ago about Russia's GDP, which is around $1.7 trillion, which isn't very much. For comparison, California has a GDP of $2.58 trillion. And we've talked about Italy being about the same. Add this to it. The United States has a GDP of about 23 trillion. We have a national budget of 1.5 trillion. Now, from that 1.5 trillion, we provide a budget to the Department of Energy. 2/3 of that budget goes to maintaining our nuclear stockpile. When former governor of Texas, Rick Perry, became energy secretary, he thought he was just going to be a booster for the Texas oil business. And he didn't know that most of his budget was getting spent on nukes. The other third of the budget goes for a variety of things, including alternative fuels, but that's beside the point. So the United States spends about $29 billion a year maintaining its nuclear stockpile. The Russians don't have that much money to spend. Now, look at what's happened in the war so far. We've discovered that they're using raw conscripts. We're discovering that they're running out of fuel and they have logistical problems. We're discovering that they've got some old equipment in the fight. Their military hasn't been maintained very, very well. They were expecting a blitzkrieg and the capture of Kyiv, and that hasn't happened yet. You add that up, if that's what they do to their conventional forces, are they doing any better for their nuclear forces? My suggestion is that they're not. And because they're not, the nuclear missiles that they have might not work, not because the warheads don't work, but because the missiles themselves require a great deal of maintenance. Maintenance for things like maintaining the liquid oxygen fuel tanks. Without getting too complicated about it, it's pretty easy to see a scenario where they go to launch and the rockets don't work properly and the warheads blow up in the silo or close to launch. It's a bad situation. And if that were to happen, Putin would be the king walking around in his underwear. Everybody would see that. Putin would be done. So Putin can't really use nukes. He can only talk about nukes. Nukes are a prop.
Okay, so I'm not suggesting that Keith is right or wrong, or Dennis either. I'm saying that they both have perspectives that seem to be in conflict with each other, and that's all good as far as I'm concerned. Because if we really knew what was going to happen and could do something about it, at least with this group, it would probably turn out to be better than what's actually happening right now.
Yeah,
But we have no idea what's happening.
our track record on predicting what Putin will do is not sterling. We predicted he wouldn't do anything. So our ability to see into his future plans is pretty limited. I think that actually both Keith and Dennis are right. I think Keith is right about what Putin wanted to do, but it hasn't worked out that way. I don't think Putin counted on the strength of the resistance in Ukraine, the strength of the resistance from NATO, the unity of NATO, the severity of the sanctions. I think all of that has shocked him. And the war he's conducting now is not the war he intended to conduct.
Okay, so I can't remember whether this was the first false start or the second false start, but when Michael, you were predicting that you're terrified basically of nuclear war. Was that the first false start?
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Great. So I just want to make sure that we got that into this show.
I know. I didn't say I'm terrified. I said I'm anxious. There is a lot of anxiety because a lot of bad things are potentially on the table, and we can't see them. We can't see we can't see exactly what's coming, or how this will resolve. I think that Biden is absolutely correct when he says whatever happens, it's clear that Russia can't win this and won't win this. But
They-
what kind of rubble? What kind of rubble is left before everyone realizes that is something I don't think anyone can see.
Well, that's what McFall said this morning. He basically said, "Look, the Russian initiative is not failing. It's getting closer and closer to all the cities they want to get to. It's possibly not as fast as they wanted. The bombing of all these buildings is their MO. So that is a sign of them pursuing what they want to pursue. And it's going to get worse because they're going to get closer and closer to these cities, and there's going to be more and more of this bombing. And they're basically going to try to bomb Ukraine into surrender. They're not going to go inside Kyiv. They're not going to try to bite off more than they can chew. Don't misinterpret slowness as failure. This is going to get worse, and Ukraine can't win. Ukraine can't win because we, and he went on to say, because we collectively can't help them and won't help them. Therefore, they're going to lose. It's just a question of how painful the loss is going to be.
Well, and I think it's also a question of how long it takes to come to an ending, because Russia itself is taking damage, not just in terms of their military, but in terms of their economy, in terms of their whole integration into the world economy. There's damage all around.
Oh yeah,
there will be damage throughout the world because this is not only affecting the future of fuel prices; it's going to affect the future of food. There's a planting season that's going to be missed. There's a harvest that's going to be missed.
Yeah.
The bad outcomes will be global. They won't just be in Ukraine and Russia.
No, I agree with that. So when I say Ukraine can't win, and I'm just paraphrasing McFall, it's also true that Russia can't win. And the world can lose. So when you weigh up Russia can't win, Ukraine can't win, and the world can lose, obviously the fastest road to peace is probably what everyone should want. And what does peace constitute? It probably constitutes Putin getting some, if not all, of what he's after.
So if for example, there were a gigantic catastrophic incident that forced NATO and the allies in, like during World War II, and if there is some serious issue with Russia's nukes, I think that's a scenario that could play out.
I got an email this week from this guy, Sergei Zhukov. Sergei lives in Samara, which is a city about 2 hours south of Moscow. And he's an engineer I've worked with over the years. He's a very good engineer, and he freelances, and his clients are all American. And he said to me, I can't get paid anymore because my customers are not allowed to send me dollars or rubles for that matter. And he wants to build a Web3 payment service using stable coins so that the US dollar could be paid to individual Russians like himself who work for American companies. And, he was Russians tend to not talk politics openly, but he was clearly against Putin. And so for me, I was actually encouraged by that, which he wants to build software that glues individual Russians into the world economy, bypassing the Russian regime. And it feels to me as if I would almost say that Germany did the right thing to buy Russian fuel, because peace to me only comes about if Russia is wealthy. I don't think there's a poor, defeated Russia safe world.
So how does the signing of an executive order about stablecoin or crypto or whatever, how would that play out in a scenario like you're suggesting, or like your friend is suggesting?
It could preserve the dollar's role as a world currency far beyond the paper dollar's role as a world currency. There was a really interesting piece by Jack Dorsey in Twitter responding to another guy I can't remember the guy's name, but I've made it the tweet of the week in my newsletter, or I put it somewhere in my newsletter. And basically this guy was saying the replacement for the dollar isn't the Chinese currency, which if you just looked at history backwards, the latest big country usually replaces the declining country with its currency as a world currency. And this guy said, it's not going to be the Chinese currency, it's going to be Bitcoin. And then Dorsey jumped on that. And the same day Biden announced an openness to looking at the US's role with stable coins and specifically with a US digital dollar. I think all of that is incredibly interesting place to explore. I wouldn't predict, I don't think the US will be brave enough to go digital and crypto. I fear that the voices of conservatism will defeat that before it reaches the drawing board. But something will, if not the dollar, something. And USDC, which is run by Jeremy Allaire, the company's name is Circle, seems to be the leading candidate for doing that right now.
But wouldn't the conservative voices be in favor of regulating something before it even happens?
I don't think regulation is the problem. I think it's embracing, and it's what Bill Gates called embrace and extend, which the government tends not to be able to do. And Bill Gates himself really didn't succeed at doing it either. But embrace and extend would be the way to create a global footprint for a US originated financial system.
It sounds like a lot to think is actually going to happen, especially given the sort of socioeconomic situation that the entire world is facing right now.
It's dangerous. It's like the internet. You know, the internet started at DARPA, and ICANN was formed many years later. And eventually the US government did a contract with ICANN to give over control of the internet to a not-for-profit governance body that's global. Well, money probably goes through the same history over a much longer period of time because there's more self-interest involved.
So may I embrace and extend what you said about peace and an impoverished Russia? I think that's right. But remember that at the end of World War II, there was an impoverished Germany and an impoverished Japan, and both of them are flourishing and reintegrated into the world economy.
Yeah,
I mean, they are the third and fourth largest economies in the world. So one possible future is a broken and rebuilt Russia under a reintegration into the world economy that and the path to it may involve Russian collapse.
That is, probably one of the options. I mean, I'd love Dennis and Brent's thoughts on this, but I don't think a defeated Russia, unlike Japan and Germany, is a real outcome we want to get to, because to get to it would be way worse than World War II. It feels like it almost feels like an integrated Russia in its current state is more doable than a defeated Russia, because a defeated Russia would definitely be a nuclear war, notwithstanding your points, Dennis, which I'm sure are quite true. But it doesn't make them not capable of pursuing a pretty nasty conflict.
Well, you're ruling out the path of a regime change in Russia?
I'm not ruling it out. I would love that. I would love that to happen. And I definitely think Putin is in a weaker position now than he was a month ago, but not weak enough for that to feel tangible to me.
Well, let me add a couple of points. I take the point about Germany and Japan, and I've always wondered why did that work for them? And I think the answer is that they accepted their guilt and atoned. Maybe not perfectly, but I think especially the Germans are a great example of accepting their guilt and atonement. You would have to get a similar kind of situation in Russia. You don't have to devastate the country, but there's an attitudinal change that I think I would get to the same place you are, Keith. I don't know if that's possible for Russia to get to a point like that. But let me throw one last thing in here. You may recall that Russia went out of its way to capture Chernobyl. And I'm scratching my head thinking, why are they bothering to capture a radioactive desert? They didn't stop there. They also captured a 6-reactor complex elsewhere in the country. Starts with a Z. I don't remember the name of it. They've also cut off electricity to Chernobyl, making their safety systems have to run on diesel generators, I guess. But so the question becomes, why are they doing that? Are they kind of hinting to the West that they're ready to turn Ukraine into a radioactive wasteland? And if they were to do that, what kind of atonement could Russia possibly do that would enable it to reintegrate into the world?
Not much, if that's what happens.
Well, the main variable there to me, Dennis, is US foreign policy. In other words, how badly do we want Russia to reintegrate back into the world? And every signal I'm reading now is we don't want to fight with Russia, we want peace, and within limits, Putin's going to be able to get what he wants. And so I think we will not pursue any policy regime which further isolates or makes more dangerous a post-Ukraine war Russia. I think that's going to be on us. So I don't see anywhere in the world really a desire to fight him other than in Ukraine.
I think that we need to get to a point pretty quickly where we cut Russia off semi-permanently, maybe for a generation.
I think
I'm not seeing. Are you optimistic that will happen? Based on what you're seeing, I'm not.
I'm optimistic that something like that would happen. Don't forget, we're a long way from an ending to this war. This war could go on for a long time.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Polish history?
Well, if I say yes, I'm fucked. So no.
Well, okay. So I'm the one-eyed man in the land of the blind, perhaps. In 1772, the 3 European empires, the Ottomans, the Austro-Hungarians, and the Russians, began a process of dismembering Poland. Within a generation, Poland did not exist on a map, and they actively worked to expunge Poland from memory, from anything in writing.
There's Poland right there.
There you go. Okay, no way. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking Poland came back into existence in 1919, I think, as part of the settlement of World War I, when the Austro-Hungarian Empire was defeated, the Ottomans were defeated, Russia became the Soviet Union and basically took itself out. Poland came back. In the interim, about 150 years, Poland had numerous uprisings. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking Ukraine could end up on a similar path, partly because of the geopolitics involved, partly because a big part of Ukraine, Western Ukraine, used to be part of Poland before it was dismembered. And there's living memory of resistance there. Knowing that, it doesn't surprise me that the Ukrainians are fighting as hard as they are. And it does not look to me like there's going to be a post-Ukraine war in any real sense.
I agree with that. I don't think there'll be a post-Ukraine war. I think, and I agree with you completely that this is going to be kind of long and ugly because the Ukrainians are proud and capable. So then the only question is how long and how ugly, because the end is already known, right? Russia doesn't go back behind the lines of prior to this. That's not happening. So the only question then is what's the end and how does it happen and how bad does it have to get before that happens?
You know, when you
Doesn't
say
Russia-
that it doesn't happen, I think that's all a matter of time frame. Because if you look at the 20th century history of Russia and then the Soviet Union and its dissolution and the break off of independent socialist republics declaring their autonomy and independence, you see that the lines do move, and that's Putin's big motivator. He resents the fact that the lines moved in the very closing years of the 20th century in 1989 through 1991. He's trying to move them back. There's no reason to assume that his moving them back is going to be any more permanent than Lenin's moving them back.
Well, you know, you make a real good point, and it goes to something we talked about a couple of months ago when we talked about. Keith mentioned it was Karl Marx who said that first time's a tragedy, second time's a farce. It looks like Russia is the last colonial empire making a curtain call and making a hash of it.
Yeah.
It is a farce.
Yeah.
Oh, here's a question though. Wouldn't they being Russia, wouldn't they need to institute regime change, A, and B, occupy as much of the Ukrainian land as they possibly could, or without changing a regime and without occupying the entire country, could they not move the borders in to those areas that they have already captured?
I think
So
that's what
I'd like to hear a poll based on that question. Which of those two things do you want to be a choice and the other one? Just restate it as A or B, Frank.
Well, I think the two of them are actually need to be combined, but A might be, will there be regime change? And B, can they occupy the entire country? Or
Okay,
C,
let's start with A. Will there be regime change?
In which country?
in Ukraine.
Ukraine, correct. Go ahead, Michael. Yes or no?
No.
Okay. Keith,
no.
Dennis.
No, there will be two regimes.
Okay, don't complicate my poll, please. And Brent.
No, that guy's too popular. And he seems to be a big fighter.
Okay. All right. Now, the second thing you were asking.
What did Frank say?
Oh, I assume Frank said he was about to say something about combining them into a C, and I'm trying to keep that.
Well, I won't do that. My answer is also no.
Okay,
By
great.
the way.
All right. So the second thing you said.
The second thing was, can they occupy the entire country, or can they just move the borders into those areas that they have already taken?
That's two separate ones. So choose
I
one.
guess. Yeah. Okay. Can they occupy the entire country?
Okay,
I don't
Michael.
see how that.
Well, if you say there's no regime change, then the answer is no.
Yeah.
They don't occupy the entire country.
That's why I said that those things are combined.
No, but I think Keith raised this question: will Putin settle for a small bite of the apple instead of the whole apple? Will they recognize Crimea and the eastern separatist regions as either independent or part of Russia?
Yeah, that's a better question, I think.
Well, I find it interesting that you all think that there will be no regime change.
We didn't finish the poll.
Go ahead. You finish the poll.
Okay, so the next question is
No, Dennis, please. What poll did we not finish?
Part B, will Putin occupy the whole country?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, so Dennis,
Yes.
uh, Keith,
I'm a no for now. Could change next week.
Brent,
I think I'm a no.
Frank,
I'm a no.
and Michael.
Well, as I said before, I don't think that this is a different question than the first question.
Yeah,
If-
and I'm
yeah,
asking that. That's the second poll.
So
yes
it's
or no?
the same answer. It's the same answer. No.
Okay, great.
They are
So
different
there was
questions.
one yes here. Who said yes?
Dennis said yes.
Okay.
They are different questions. You got to remember, Ukraine is a big breadbasket. It's a flat land, and it's not defensible by the Ukrainian military. Ukrainian military is at its best in house-to-house fighting. In a flat, sparse land, they're in trouble. So I don't see a problem with Russia taking over the whole country if it can get the cities. That's where the battle is. Will there be regime change? I say there's going to be two regimes. There's going to be the puppet government, and there's going to be Ukraine government in exile, just like we had the Polish government in exile, the Dutch government in exile, all of those exile governments in World War II in London. And it's gonna be like that for a while.
Well, if they go to London, they're in trouble because Putin has a really good ability to poison people in London.
London,
Yeah.
I would suggest that they exile themselves somewhere else.
And he does it in a very English way with an umbrella, apparently, with a needle on the end.
Okay. Well, enough of the comedy, please.
I don't think that's comedy. I think that's
No, I don't either.
It's kind of what they did.
That was sarcasm on my part. That's
it's
not
history.
comedy. So Ian Waring says online somewhere,
Under comments.
Facebook.
Facebook says that Putin will be deposed. I disagree. I don't think Putin will be deposed. There will not be regime change in Russia.
Yeah, when you get an autocrat like that, regime change needs to happen from outside in. Just like we toppled Hitler and Mussolini and Tojo and Hirohito from the outside in. There's nobody left powerful enough to do that job.
Yeah. You look at the
Yeah.
US Civil War, it required there to be two armies. And there's only one army in Russia. And unless the army splits, which mostly you'd rule out, but who knows, then that doesn't happen. But, you know, is Putin becoming less popular? I believe that the answer to that has to be yes, but mainly amongst young, Western-facing, more global thinkers.
Unless all of this goes away, if it turns out there's a story, I don't want to push this as a rumor, but there was a story in one of the British newspapers that talked about an interview done with a former security member of Putin's team from the past, who said that Putin was unhealthy, and that a lot of what's happening with what's going on with Putin could be a result of his health issues.
You know,
I think there are so many possibilities that it's, you know, prediction is fraught with a high probability of error.
Yeah.
Yeah, but opinion is, welcome.
Opinion.
Yeah.
Well, if you want my opinion, there should be.
I hesitate to characterize anything that anybody is saying here as a prediction. I'm
yes.
talking about our opinions about what's happening. And, you know, I think that regime change on either part of this equation is, at the moment, doesn't seem to be real. It seems to be a media concoction.
Well, that's a good point. I mean, there's the whole idea of how misinformation colors the Russians' opinion of what's going on is an important part of this story. But I was thinking the other day about how who is that misinformation actually affecting inside of Russia? Seems to me that it's affecting an older part of the Russian electorate, or the Russian the people of Russia, and that
Trump
the younger
stays.
people, that the younger people are getting, and that the younger people are getting their information still online, or as much as online as they can get, before Russia just completely knocks out Meta.
Well, that poses a question. I don't know if this will happen or not, but with these younger generations that are, I guess, digital natives or digital first, could potentially be the inside revolt be as these folks get cut off from social media and things that they pretty much seem to live for. If they start losing all that kind of stuff, will that be what causes the potential for an upheaval in Russia?
I would say no.
I would say no as well. But I do think you're onto something. You know, I don't know how many of you remember, but back in the Khrushchev days, there was all this stuff that used to leak out about how the Russians loved the Beatles and jazz music. Those were the two things that we heard a lot about. And I always thought as a kid, this is a signal that blood still pumps through the veins of Russians, and they're not completely brainwashed by Stalinism, which we were led to believe they were all brainwashed. It always struck me that the love of the Beatles and love of jazz was evidence that they're not brainwashed. They know they can't win, so they're getting their dose in different ways. And I think Web3 today represents a similar thing that Russia is the world leader in crypto, software and hardware, driven by young people who are trained in scientific universities in Russia, who see Web3 as a way for them to plug into the rest of the world. And that's tangible and real. And, you know, if you compare the Web3 Russians to the plutocrat Russians, oligarch Russians, they're different animals. These are bottoms up young people building stuff to try to get, you know, to build careers and make money. And I think our best way to engage with the young of Russia is through that. And I think there is a pulse inside Russia in those young people that is represented by that.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think? Does anybody think that Beto O'Rourke is going to win a seat in any legislative body?
He's not running for legislative body.
He's what, governor?
He's running for governor.
Okay. Do you think he's going to win?
I think the odds are against him, but I think he has a chance.
Right. Well, I think that they're about equal, the chance that regime change is going to come through the digital media as Beto O'Rourke winning the governorship.
This all depends on time frame. You know, by when. I think that what Keith is talking about is happening and will happen and will grow. You know, by when is the question, and that's very hard to see. One other thing to say about the young people in Russia, the older generation, our generation, remembers when Russia was isolated and there was no McDonald's or Starbucks. The youngers, anyone 30 or 35 or younger doesn't remember that. For them, something very bleak is happening that they've never seen in their lives.
Yeah, there was a time, though, when Russia was an ally.
Well, an ally of convenience.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Uncle Joe.
The impact of McDonald's and Western economics is, it's what's, there was a film, what was the 1, 2, 3? Do you remember that? Billy Wilder?
Yes. Billy Wilder, James Cagney.
Exactly. The impact of that is exactly what the Soviet Union and to some extent Russia has been fighting against, because they recognize it as being a threat to their way of life. So just because the Russian youth or middle age at this point is used to social media and a free flow of information in the context of a conflicted media, doesn't mean that it may be the thing that actually precipitated this invasion.
I've had to learn a new word because of all this discussion. It's not a new word, but it's new to me. Autarky, which is a self-contained, almost like a terrarium economy.
What's the definition? Because I looked it up once.
That's what it is.
A few days ago. What is the specific definition?
Specific definition is, I'll have
That's
to,
pretty close. That's
I
pretty
think
close.
it's a self-reproducing autocracy.
So
Yeah,
the definition of
country or society which is economically independent.
Okay.
So it is like a terrarium where it's its own environment, and it takes care of itself.
Is that North Korea? Yeah, I was just saying North Korea.
North Korea is a good example of that. Yes.
But and I think to give some context, it's important to say, because at least for me, because I haven't said it, I talk a lot about the relative decline of the US. Russia is in absolute decline and has been since the end of the Cold War. Russia is a declining power with declining economics and declining influence, but with a big military. Now, normally, the winners don't fight, in wars. The winners stay out of wars and pick up the pieces afterwards. The wars are normally fought between the second-tier losers, with the winners keeping out. And it feels to me that this, if you really put this in context, this is a declining Russia that's still dangerous, that needs to be managed. And so there's nothing good about Russia. There's nothing positive or optimistic that you could think of about Russia, except for the young people's engagement with the world. That's probably the most optimistic thing.
But wouldn't you then say that the declining Russia is a more dangerous Russia?
Absolutely, but undefeatable unless you're prepared to go to World War III. So you don't really want. What is the equivalent of Britain versus Germany in 2022? It's probably Russia versus Germany. Russia versus NATO.
But what can China do? I mean, we brought that up last week.
China will not fight. The winners never fight.
But I don't mean fight, but I mean, what role can they play? Can they actually play a moderating role?
No, they benefit from this. Just as America and China are the two biggest beneficiaries of this, because it weakens Europe.
Thomas Friedman had a column, I think, last week.
I can explain
No, that's
that.
all right. You have several times. Go ahead, Michael.
See, Thomas Friedman had a column last week saying that China was the only one who could come in and moderate Russia. But he also said, but they won't.
Mm.
Okay, well, you have a drop at 11, correct?
I do, yeah. I apologize.
And you do too, Brent?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Brent, you get the first last thought.
I think I said this last week, and it still feels the same to me. There's a lot of discussion, a lot of, I guess the media is now 24/7 this. I understand why it's important, for people to be up to date with as much as possible, but it just feels like media is just gone overboard with this, and all the speculation and all the opinions. I don't know how much this is helping. It just feels to me, maybe I'm the downer on this, but it just feels like the more that it gets this much focus and the less that there is to actually, impact what's going on over there, it causes, I almost go back to a little of what Michael said at the beginning. It almost causes least me, this feeling of frustration because there's really nothing that's being said that seems to be having any impact.
It
And
kind of
it's
reminds
probably,
you of,
probably too general a statement, but that's just the feeling I get sometimes with this.
it's reminiscent of how we felt when Trump was in power, isn't it?
Kind of,
Yeah.
it really is.
I would characterize it, this will have to be my last word, but it's clickbait meme production. They're trying to get our attention around memes, and they want us to click or turn on, and there's no context. This show today is in stark contrast to most of what the media is doing. We're actually talking about the real things. They are not. It's clickbait meme production. It's short term, and it's narrative builds by putting one meme on top of another.
So there are a number of things that are occurring in the so-called creator economy. There's an interesting app that's been released by Substack, which has implications for how that's going to get integrated into their newsletter product and strategy. And I think it speaks directly to what you just said, both Brent and Keith, which is that we can sit around and endlessly rehash and worry about this stuff, or we can at some point just disconnect from the mainstream media and rebuild it. And I think that's starting to go on.
Mm-hmm.
At least
we can be very dispassionate about analyzing this, but I can't get away from the fact that at least 2 million people have been chased out of or fled out of the place that they live, causing not only their own misery, their own injury, illness, causing a huge strain on the countries that they're going to. The human misery that is going to be resulting from Putin's desire to change the borders of the Russian Empire is just making me furious and angry. And there's something about the way we've been discussing this that seems surreal to me. This move might happen this way, this move might happen that way. People are dying and people are losing their families, and it's going to be horrible. People are in California spending $10 for gas. Why should they be spending $10?
It's horrible right now.
I understand,
and it will continue to be horrible. So
yes, but the misery is going to be growing before it subsides.
Okay, so what are you going to do about that?
I don't know. That's why I started by saying,
see you, Brent.
That's why I'm so emotionally distraught by this whole thing.
I understand. What are you going to do about it?
Well, the little that I can do, I'm making contributions to people who are providing relief. I'm making sure that I worked for the defeat of every Republican in the U.S. And other than that, I unplug and listen to Berlioz.
So I'm doing the same things that you're doing, Michael. And honestly, I feel exactly the same way that you do. And I am personally disappointed in the mainstream media and the way it's been covering this story. But I think that our conversation today is a good thing to do. And I think that we did discuss some interesting and some probable and possibles, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'll tell you something I found interesting that I discovered the last couple of days. CNN has made a decision that, or MSNBC has made a decision that instead of having a number of shows that they're going to create for MSNBC Plus, they're going to be migrating some of their on-air programs over to the MSNBC online arena, which means that those same that same content will now be living in an area where alternative content might have lived. So I find that to be disappointing. That's it.
I have a question. A lot of us have been, assuming that this war is going to be sort of tank and traditional gunfire, and we are staying out of that. Mariupol sounds like it's in a dire situation. Mariupol is a city in the south. It's a kind of a path to Crimea as far as a land bridge, and it feels like what the Russians are trying to do is to starve everybody out of there. Now that's a different kind of scenario than a shooting war. What are we going to do? And this is probably within the matter of a week. What are we going to do when we start to hear that tens of thousands of people are going to die of starvation
And dehydration.
and dehydration? They've got no water.
And cold and hypothermia. I mean, no water, no heat, no food.
Is it a little bit of a different calculation when we start to hear that? As a,
that's been Zelensky's plea in the last few days, and he says this will be on you in the West if you let this happen. This will be on you.
Yeah. That's not an unusual military strategy.
No, it is, and I think Keith was saying this. This is a standard Putin military strategy.
So Zelensky's probably right. It is going to be on us, but we're not going to do anything because we can't.
Yet. We're not going to do
Yes,
anything.
I agree, Dennis. You're right. I think that it's yet. I think yet is the key there. I think
not yet, but yet.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Kidding. I'm just kidding.
Anyway.
Yeah,
so do we start negotiating for humanitarian relief paths?
I believe those negotiations are already going on, have been going on, and the Russians keep reneging. So I don't know what today's news is, but that's what people are trying to do.
I think we got to give them Patriot missile battles and give them those MiG-29s.
Maybe. But I think in a bigger picture kind of way, we're still waiting for a Pearl Harbor moment, something that will change the attitude of the voting public, because when the public's mood changes, the politicians won't be afraid to act. And I think the CIA already knows much more than I know about Russia's nukes, and I think that's not an issue for participating. The problem becomes getting appropriation and approval under the War Powers Act for the president to do something, and that approval is awaiting a Pearl Harbor moment. So I think things are going to get a little worse before they begin to get better. And I think once you get Congress's attention on this, a couple of votes might convince Putin's followers that Putin needs to be restrained.
What do you make of the Russian propaganda about chemical biological weapons in Ukraine? Are they, the West is saying that they are signaling that that's what they're going to do. That they're going to create a false flag and actually start deploying chemical or biological weapons in Ukraine. I don't know how much of that is propaganda or how much of that is analysis. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, don't forget, China's making the same noises. So it's China and Russia claiming without evidence that there might be labs churning out this stuff in Ukraine.
China, Russia, and Tucker Carlson.
Yeah. So I think we've done what our playbook has done throughout this crisis, which is to foretell what's happening as a potential for a false flag
I
operation.
think we have to negotiate a settlement with Zelensky. I don't think that calling Putin's bluff is going to lead to anything but World War III.
I think you call Putin's bluff.
And
I know. I heard you.
but you
Yeah,
know
but
that
I don't agree with you.
I think
The,
you do it in a way that boils Putin's frog. You don't attack. You begin by putting obstacles in his way. We've already done a great deal with the economy, and Putin is right on time saying that, oh, this is an act of war. But it's not an act of war that he'll retaliate against.
But if you boil the frog, you're giving him more time to do things that you don't want. And one of the things, by the way, that might be the Pearl Harbor moment might be a Russian chemical attack.
Might be. If you want to make it a chemical attack, you should draw a line in the sand and tell Putin that any chemical attack will be construed as an act of war.
Do that now.
You got to do it now. You can't wait till
Yeah.
there's a chemical attack.
Yeah.
But,
Do you think that that's going to happen?
well,
You think that we're going to draw a line in the sand?
I think we have
Biden's
a
going to draw a line in the sand. Every indication is he will not do that.
we don't have a good track record on this. We had a line in the sand in Syria, and
Ignored
Obama
it.
Obama
Ignored it.
right.
Yeah. See where that happened.
Well, we do have one line in the sand now, which Biden reiterated this morning, which was not 1 inch of NATO territory. That's one line that is in the sand, and the other thing is the thing that Tina raised. If there is an absolute humanitarian disaster in Mariupol, surely that is going to inflame passions throughout the world.
Well, I wonder if Biden already knows that the legislators would be willing to give him the power if there was an incursion into some NATO territory. If his line in the sand that he has already drawn about that is one that's already backed up with.
Well, I don't think they. I don't know, but I don't think they need any more authorization because it's a treaty obligation under Article 5.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's already baked in.
I think I agree with Dennis, which is it's not an authorization that Biden's looking for or that we need. We need public support, and it's not going to happen in this environment. As Tina suggested, and as Michael just suggested, possibly, a disaster of starving and dying children might.
The other question that I had because of that horrible scenario that occurred at the maternity hospital, and all of this talk about war crimes, is there any way that there is ever any possibility that there could be some prosecution for war crimes?
I think you have to look at the tenor of the times, the zeitgeist. Pearl Harbor put us over the edge, and we fought the fascism. But go back into the 1930s and look at the Spanish Civil War. There were atrocities, there were war crimes. Picasso painted Guernica. The whole world was up in arms, but the world was pacifist and didn't want to have another global conflagration. So United States people volunteered and formed the Lincoln Brigade and fought in Spain. But you know what? At the end of the day, Francisco Franco won. He pacified the country, and he stayed in power until he died in, what is it, the 1970s, 1980s, something like that. So you gotta look at that. I think you have to look at as I say, the tenor of the times. Are these times when we'll get our dander up and fight, or are these times when we'll just go mute?
Yeah,
Good question.
I think that I don't know. There's something about that scenario which I think people are sick of endless wars, and we're moving away from long-term engagements. And I think that more likely, at least in my opinion, is that we negotiate directly with Zelensky in public. We say basically what is being said, which is we are not going to be drawn into a global war here. So how do we protect you and your people? If it's an accommodation.
Who are your people?
What?
Who are your people?
The people of Ukraine.
Okay.
How do we protect your interests and the people of Ukraine while at the same time not giving Putin any rope to move into a wider conflict? I think it's Zelensky's ball game right now, and the one conversation that they're not having is between Zelensky and Biden.
I would agree with most of what you say, but I think there's a broader perspective. I keep saying broader. I think the negotiation has to be between us and Zelensky, as you say, but also us and Russia. And we hold the a couple of trump cards. We can protect Zelensky to a degree, and we can also tell Putin that he doesn't get his economy back unless we approve the deal.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so that this becomes a more complex negotiation. And right now, Putin doesn't want to talk to anybody. There are no three-way discussions. But I think ultimately, that's what has to happen.
If our country as a people think that there's a potentially brokered solution to the current problem, that gives us a lot of leverage.
Yeah, but you're asking a lot of our country.
No,
yeah.
I think Trump's on the decline. I think he's going away as a disruptor. I think that the Republicans they're not running away from him, but they're basically coming up on the side of a bipartisan, playbook as far as the war is concerned.
Within living memory, we have great examples of the United States acting as an honest broker with Ireland and Britain to produce the Good Friday Accords and the Dayton Accords that ended the hostilities in the Balkans. So there's a playbook for this. There's a model for it, but we got to get people off the dime enough to have a ceasefire and to come to some kind of together where maybe there isn't direct face-to-face negotiation between the belligerents, at least not immediately, but the United States ought to be able to begin brokering that.
Well, let me go back to something that Dennis raised earlier. What did you say the GDP of Russia was?
1.7.
Right. And do you know the size of the aid package that was just approved by the Senate last night and signed by Biden this morning?
Well,
13 billion?
It was
$1.5 trillion. An aid package that's equivalent to the annual GDP of Russia.
That can't be right.
Well,
1.5 trillion?
Yes.
I don't know why 13 billion came up in my brain.
Did I have that wrong? Am I off by some orders of magnitude?
It could be that the total package was the amount that you're saying, Michael, and that what Ukraine was going to get was
the omnibus bill also included
That's
Yeah, it
what
was keeping the government going.
Yeah.
that was the omnibus bill.
Yeah, and there was lots of pork in that bill too, apparently. So
Right. Well, I think you may have transposed a T on top of a B.
No,
But-
I think, yeah.
I mean, I saw the headline just before we started the show. So
you have a
I know
B.
what you're referring to.
Yeah, you have a B as part of the T.
and
Okay.
that rhymes with P, and that's
I'm not sure. I'm just telling you.
No,
what-
you're right. I
Music man.
misplaced a comma.
All right.
Well, okay.
Well, now that we've
Had our math lesson.
at least we have a roadmap, possibly. I mean, we have to, or there's no
Yeah,
way.
the 1.5 trillion was the entire package, and 13 billion is for Ukraine. So that's still
Yeah.
a huge
Yeah.
amount compared to the entire GDP of Russia.
Through that.
Yeah.
If they had that,
Hoorah.
if they had that much money, they'd maintain a lot of their nukes.
Question is which of them strategically are they maintaining? Might it be those nukes in the submarines? Might it be, I can't imagine that they've let their entire entourage of nukes be in such bad shape that they are actually cherry picking the ones that they want to make sure are still taken care of, which may be a reason that our intelligence may be telling us that, hey, it's not going to be as bad as you think, but hey, it only takes 10 of them.
Well,
Yeah, think about this.
they're the missiles, and they're also what they call tactical nuclear weapons that don't require quite the delivery technology of an ICBM.
Yeah, but think about this. The oligarchs have been stealing left and right, even from the military budget. So
Yeah.
the problem becomes, do you really know which of your missiles are capable?
Yeah.
And if you don't, then all you can do is rattle your saber.
Yeah.
But I think
and-
I agree with you. I think that's all he can do is to rattle his saber, and he's doing a pretty effective job of it at the moment.
Well, put me in charge. I'll make sure he doesn't.
Okay, great. Make it so.
How many votes?
We've had examples in Trump world where he would only listen to people who told him things he agreed with in the first place. He rejected any advice or intelligence that he didn't pre-approve. And I think that in Putin land, that's even more the case. People can't go to him with troubling news. People can only go to him with good news. So anything that is not quite right in their military or their missile structure, as it gets kicked up to the chain of command from one level to the next, it gets more and more massaged till by the time Putin sees it, everything's wonderful.
It feels like a Colonel Bat Turgison reference.
Yeah,
You remember him?
I do.
It feels like a reboot, a streaming reboot of Dr. Strangelove that we're living through right now.
We can all be sorry.
Well, except for that last shot, which I thought was the worst chroma key in Kubrick's career.
You mean the with riding the bomb?
Yeah,
riding the bomb.
Yeah.
The next to last shot.
Oh, Slim Pickens. Yeah, I thought he was great.
Yeah.
No comment about Slim Pickens that I'm making. I'm just talking about the graphic.
That was a bad key. Bad key.
Kubrick invented the space program on film prior to its existence. So he could have done better with Dr. Strangelove. At that last shot really killed the movie.
Well,
I think you're being
heard
picky.
it.
I think you're being picky.
Absolutely.
The movie
Kubrick
did.
is my favorite director, and I'm sure that he doesn't give a shit about what I think.
But by the way, I wanna take a a break here for a second and recommend that you guys see the TV version of the Ipcrest file.
Yes,
It's
thank you very much.
fabulous.
All we need to do is to actually have a network in this country that releases it, which we don't.
I think I saw that it was going to come into America on IMDb, which is interesting because IMDb is starting to do some really good stuff.
Yeah, that's interrupted with advertising, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it's better than not being able to see it at all and having Frank say that it's the greatest thing ever.
It's brilliant. I'm just saying.
We want it. We don't
Yeah.
have it.
I
Yeah,
know
you'll
the
love it.
streaming revolution is starting to piss me off.
Yo, Verizon has decided that it's now going to sell a streaming bundle.
Uh,
Who knew?
Going to?
Well, so they are streaming bundle. Let me see. What does that sound like? Cable?
Well, I've been off in YouTube TV land, which
That's great.
is remarkably interesting.
Yeah.
But of course, I have to fall back eventually on my Comcast subscriptions in order to get all these new streaming shows without paying more.
You could use a VPN and then get ITV from the UK in America. I'm just saying. I didn't say that out loud, did I?
Yeah, I think you did.
All right. Anyway, I have to go, guys. Fascinating conversation.
All right. Well, let me do my wrap up here. Thanks to our producer and director, Tina Chase Gillmor. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. And yeah, interesting show. I mean, it's really pretty hard to talk about anything except this war. It's got our full attention and focus. And I think we have to talk about it. And I'm glad we are.
Thanks to Michael Markman.
I just did a little quick Google. AMC Plus will stream the Ipcrest file. in the
Right.
US.
Right. And then how do you get AMC Plus?
You pay money.
Yeah.
Subscribe to it. It's another one.
Well,
It's another one of these premium subscription services.
Or
But you could churn it.
Yes, you can.
you can do, yeah.
No, they all have free trial periods. If you
Yeah,
don't subscribe before that's over.
Yeah.
How many episodes is it, Frank?
It's not many. I want to say there's 10, and it took me 2 days to watch it. We watched the first episode on its real broadcast day, and then they said, and if you didn't see the rest of it, go to ITV on the red button and hit the red button and watch the rest of it in 2 days.
Thanks to Frank Radis.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks, guys.
Thanks to Dennis Pombriant.
Thanks for having me. It was a very stimulating conversation.
Yeah, and I heartily recommend the brilliantly written Potemkin Village post. I don't understand the reference, but you'll explain it some other time, I guess.
Google can tell you.
Yeah. Let me tell you, the whole thing is just cardboard.
It's a paper moon.
There you go.
Thanks to Brent Leary and Keith Tier for their yeoman-like service.
And the cats.
And thanks to everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
We got cat bombed.
Bye-bye.
Bye,
Cheers.
guys. See ya.
Bye.